as a pastor, and when you're preaching, how do you help people when you're talking with them about the application of the truth of Scripture? How do you talk with them or segue into that concept of creating space in your life for the teaching that you're hearing right now?
Well, I think of two ways. One, you and I both have had experienced is what's called open worship. And so actually this is something I participated in when I was a young pastor almost 30 years ago, was in worship itself is to create space for God. Now, again, in our modern world, churches have to fill every minute with sound or something of experience. And that doesn't sit well with me. The history of the church, the history of man with God, is learning how to sit in silence.
Yes.
And that takes discipline. You have to learn what it means to sit, even in worship, where you're not expressing yourself necessarily, but you're listening for God. So at the church that I lead, we have a time of open worship, creating space, which leads directly into a little time of worship and communion, which we offer communion every week because I believe that when Jesus talked about remembrance and about reconciliation, as Paul says in 1 Corinthians 11, that there is a time for reflection that needs to take place. I need more than 5.2 seconds to take communion. So we take more time to be reflective. Now that leads directly into the teaching time. And then I end almost every week with 3 questions. So as a teacher, as you and I both are, so I've given information, I've invited them into that experience, but then I leave them with something to ponder and to say, during the week, I want you to think about these things. And one of my questions is always something about taking what I've learned and sharing that or thinking about it this week. So what I invite them to do is not just pay attention right now. I want you to write these down, and during the week, I want you to sit. I want you to think about this question and what does that mean for you. So I'm inviting them into the process.
That's really good. You know, yesterday I was sitting with a couple of students and we were discussing this, the issue of silence actually. And I was telling them that I actually have to have silence when I write or when I'm reading, when I'm researching something. And their comment to me is that, you know, we have to have something going on in the background and it has to have words. So it always makes me interested to see the differences between people. And this would, of course, take a lot more time to unpack, which we don't have today. But the idea of silence and how important that is, even in daily living.
Yeah.
You know, the space that we need to create there. I really like that phrase.